It is officially the end of week 10. This week I have been to California, Oregon, and right now I'm in beautiful Washington State. There are a lot of amazing highlights to share for this week, but let's first start with the fact that this week I talked to 29, actually now 30. I just talked to another stranger, 30 strangers from these 3 states so far. I still have about 15 left to get in Washington, and that brings our total to, hold on, I gotta check, 692. Like I've mentioned in a couple of the past updates, I've been getting mostly repeat pieces of advice at this point, and those themes again have mostly been around time and not wasting it, taking advantage of it in your youth, and not waiting, right? So many people, I think the one that sticks out to me the most is so many people talk about how they thought that they would do the things that they had dreamed about when they retired, or they thought they would do it when they were older and had a little bit more money so they could experience it more fully. And now they're a little bit older and they don't have the energy, or they are in a wheelchair and can't do the things that they had one day dreamed of, and so they look back with a little bit of regret about how they could have done it in their 20s, the things they wanted to do, or their 30s or whenever, and they didn't, and now they can't. And so those are the ones that have stuck out with me the most, and I hear that quite often, to be honest. Let's get right into the highlights. This past week I started doing the northern finishing part of California, and as part of that I got to drive through the famous California redwoods. I did the Avenue of the Giants, an amazing scenic road that takes you straight through those redwoods forests, and it was unreal. Here are a couple photos and videos from that. I couldn't believe the scale, and I think it helps now. I'm gonna put myself next to a tree, watch, hold on. So I think it helps to be next to what I would consider as an Ohioan to be a pretty normal sized tree, because when you're in the redwoods it just feels like they're all giant trees. They're huge. They're 6 feet or larger in diameter, right? And so they're way bigger around. When you're looking at them all together, they look like they're normal size, like they're just average trees, until you kind of stand next to them, or when then you see a tree like this and you're like, oh my god, these trees are giants, which makes sense that they called that road the Avenue of the Giants. Who would have thought? As I got to the northern part of California, I believe I was in a place called Rockwell, and I saw this stand on the side of the road, not a stand really, it's a store, that said, Paul's Famous Smoked Salmon Jerky. And I literally stopped on the side of the road, turned around, and went back. And what I learned when I went there was that this is truly Paul's Famous Smoked Salmon Jerky. And they didn't have any more of the salmon jerky because they were sold out. But what I learned by staying there for an hour and talking to the folks there is that the men there were part of the Yurok tribe, and they have been salmon fishers for thousands of years right in that area. And so they told me about their history, and they gave me their life advice. They're part of my project now as well. And I bought some smoked salmon, and I was like, I have like sandwich buns and bread, and I could make like a smoked salmon sandwich. He goes, no, you just gotta eat it plain. So here's a video of me at the top of a very foggy cliff right by the ocean in Rockwell, California, eating smoked salmon, living my absolute best life. Another highlight is that I got to try Dutch Bros for the first time. Dutch Bros is just a very famous like drive-through coffee shop around here. Amazing. I told the person taking my order that I'd never been there before, and she was like, all right, you feeling coffee, like sweet, want milk in your coffee? And I was like, yeah. And she made this amazing drink for me, and then was also part of my project. I then proceeded to get Dutch Bros, I think, for the next 2 days straight as well. And coffee is not really a part of my budget here. I've been purposely making sure that I don't consume too much caffeine, because caffeine is expensive, right? And when I'm on this minimal budget, having to budget for coffee every single day would be too much. But Dutch Bros was worth it. My food budget covered that for those few days. But also that first one was comped for me. She goes, since it's your first time, I'll give it to you for free. So, so then I started heading up north towards Oregon, and oh my God, Oregon's beauty, even just driving through it was unreal. I mean, just forests of pine type trees, lined by mountains in the background. And then with like the best sunset you could ever imagine, just like fluffy, rich, dense clouds in the sky, just floating around, perfectly spaced out. I was like, am I dead? Am I dead and just dreaming? Because this is probably what heaven looks like. And I could say that about a lot of different places that I've been to so far, including most of California, to be honest. But I'm someone that really appreciates the beauty of nature. And as someone who didn't grow up engaging in a lot of nature, I think I extra appreciate it now. And as somebody from Ohio, where Ohio is just all like flat farmland, and there's beauty in that as well. But again, I extra appreciate this Western scenery. It's breathtaking and it's dreamy. Another highlight is that I got a car wash for the first time on this trip. Look at her, she's beautiful. My car was so dirty, and I didn't even realize that after getting the car wash and looking into those side mirrors, it was like looking in it in HD. It was so clean and clear, which made me realize I probably should have gotten a car wash sooner. But the reason I haven't is because most of the places I've been to, every time I'm like, I should get a car wash, it'll rain, and I haven't seen rain in weeks. So my car also didn't see rain for weeks, and it was way overdue for a fresh cleaning. Another highlight is that I got to stay with friends in Portland and again up in Seattle once I got there. Both of them had pets, and it was nice to see Christine Mitchell's puppy, and of course them too. I was also excited to see my friend Cade and his two cats, which made me miss my two cats, because they're the way they interacted was very similar to the way that my two cats interact with each other, and it's just like a refresher. I totally miss my cats, Prince and CK, at home, but I will see them soon. But on my way up to Seattle, I found a cherry stand, and of course I was like, these people are gonna have an incredible story to tell, I hope, and I'm gonna buy some cherries because I love cherries, and I don't know the last time that I've had just fresh cherries. So stopped by their stand, took a photo, talked to them. They had a really amazing story to share. One of the guys at that booth told me about how he tried to drive his Camaro off a cliff, I think in the 70s or 80s, and did not succeed with his attempted suicide, and he's thankful for that. Now he's got an amazing wife, and he gave me advice related to that, which I will share one day. Those Rainier cherries were delicious. And speaking of Rainier, as I was driving into Seattle, sun was setting, and I saw Mount Rainier for the first time, and I couldn't believe it, right? Like, it's huge, and it's just singular, you know? Like, Mount Rainier's it's just there on its own. And that was very different from the mountains that I saw anywhere else, because you see whole ranges. And that's true, like Washington still has its ranges, but at least driving into Seattle, all I saw was just the top of Mount Rainier. And so I pulled over and got this amazing shot of Mount Rainier at sunset, and I mean, as you know, if you've ever seen mountains in person and try to take a picture of them, pictures just can't do them justice. There's almost no way to do mountains justice in a photo. Even with a telephoto lens, whatever it might be, it is a super challenge, but this at least gives you an idea. And also, once I got up to Seattle, I actually came back down about an hour to Tacoma to meet up with a friend from TikTok. This is the third friend that I've met on this journey from TikTok, and their name's Jesse. Jesse and I actually have been interacting with each other for probably the past year or so. And once I realized they were in Tacoma, I was like, hey, I'm there. Like, I'm in the area. Let's meet up. And we did, and now we're lifelong friends. We're both photographers, and I allowed Jesse to take 2 photos on my 4x5 film camera. I took one of those photos, was one that I took of them, but they took another one in that little area, and it was great to meet them. Jesse, it was great to meet you. We are lifelong friends now. Can't wait to see you again sometime soon. So let's talk about challenges. This week, I definitely spent too much time on TikTok and on my phone, and whenever I spend too much time on TikTok or my phone, I end up finding myself not being as present in person. And so I found myself this week feeling a little bit like disengaged, or just kind of just not present. I found myself not enjoying this week the way I have enjoyed a lot of other weeks when I haven't spent as much time on my phone. Some of you in my life know this. I made a whole series this past fall where I broke up with my phone using a book called How to Break Up with Your Phone, and that was because I was spending an average of 6 hours a day on my phone, mostly on, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And so it's kind of a problem for me, right? As with, I would call it an addiction. I called it an addiction then too, because like any addiction, it's something that in your head, you don't really want to be doing it, but your body craves it, right? And that's the way I would feel with my phone, right? My body and even probably my mind wanted it, but then when I would think about what I was doing, I'm like, I've been on TikTok for too long. I wish I could just stop scrolling, and I would just keep scrolling. So this week was a little bit more rough in spilling back into that habit. Usually when I make myself more aware of it and I make a very conscious effort to reduce my amount of time on my phone, I do a good job of it. So this upcoming week, week 11, I will do a better job of not spending as much time on my phone. I also haven't been working out as regularly these past few weeks as I did the first few weeks, and even before this journey, I was not in a regular habit of working out, but I will tell you, I felt really good when I was regularly working out these first couple of weeks. Who would have thought that exercise for a human is good for your mental health as well? Who would have thought? But I haven't been doing the best job of that the past few weeks, and that's okay. Again, I can do my best to go to more Planet Fitnesses for the intention of working out and showering the next few weeks. And a reason why I haven't been working out the last few weeks, it's not just because I've been like lazy or you know, whatever. It's because as I've been finding Planet Fitnesses along the way the last few weeks, I'm getting to them after not showering for 2 or 3 days at a time. And mind you, that's me sitting in my car, sweating, walking around, and all of that after 2 or 3 days is pretty nasty. So I don't even want to work out because I'm like, I'm already gross. And then I'm like, I don't want to shower and then work out and then shower again. So it's a whole thing. Really, I just have to make a more intentional effort to go to Planet Fitness. That's it. And another challenge, which I think I mentioned in last week's video too, is that there are only 3 states on the West Coast, right? So when we're talking about my 20-person quota per state, we're talking about the fact that there are 14 states on the East Coast. I got almost 300 strangers on the East Coast. I don't know if that 14 counts DC too. So really, I probably got 300 strangers as I made my way down the East Coast. And then now that I'm on the West Coast, I've gotten like less than 100. Right? And so for me in my head, I know it's a fallacy, but in my head, I'm like, I should be getting more. I'm shitting on myself. I should be getting more people as I've driven all the way up the United States coast on the other side. But in reality, for the quota that I'm working towards, I'm doing just fine. Actually, I'm doing more than just fine. I think I got over 30 people in California, which was more than any other state I've gotten so far. So this one's not as much of a challenge as much as it is an observation of the interaction I just had with the stranger here. We had a great interaction. I won't even say this person's name. We had a great interaction, and he starts talking about how when he was younger, he found Jesus and came to become very religious as a Christian, and how that has really enlightened his life. And I believe that's very genuine. I've heard that from quite a few people along the way as well. What shocked me about our interaction is that after having a very positive conversation together, at the end he goes, have you come to Jesus? And I said, well, you know what? I grew up as a devout Muslim, and I'm not devout anymore. I believe in God, but I don't follow any particular religion. I just don't get behind the rituals and the organized religion. And he had this little look of like disapproval on his face. He goes, Jesus is, coming to Jesus is the only way to go to heaven. And otherwise you go to hell. And so I really hope that you find Jesus soon. And that was like, why ruin such an amazing interaction together? I know, like, there's a phrase, right? It's like I gotta adjust something. There's a phrase that's like, there's no hate like Christian love, which is so fascinating to me because not all Christians are like this, but to have a positive interaction with a total stranger, right? Me, from his perspective, and then tell that stranger, hey, by the way, since you don't believe in Jesus, you're probably gonna go to hell. What a crazy statement to make. And it's said with a tone of love, but that's not love. Telling somebody that if they don't believe the same thing that you believe, they're gonna go burn for eternity, that's insane. So again, not a challenge, but just such a fascinating thing to experience. And one final challenge is that it felt like not much happened this week. And the reason why that's a challenge is because that's totally a cognitive distortion for me. Because when I looked back at the photos and videos that I took this week, and when I looked back at my journal and what I wrote down, the truth is a lot happened this week. And in my head, for whatever reason, I'm like, again, this is probably because I was spending too much time on my phone. I'm like disengaged. I, in my head, felt like not much happened, and it took reflecting intentionally and seeing something tangible for me to realize that actually I had an amazing week. I saw a lot of great people, I met a lot of interesting people, saw a lot of beautiful scenery, all of which in my head was clouded by essentially TikTok. So, that really makes me think about how I spend my time on my phone, understanding that TikTok does bring me a lot of joy in its own ways, but only in moderation. And beyond that, it actually sucks the soul and energy out of my days and weeks. It makes me forget about the things that I notice and appreciate and enjoy, to the point where if I didn't make the effort to go look back at my photos and videos and read my journal, which I journal every day now, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't feel as happy as I do. That's insane. That's crazy. I hope that makes you kind of think about your use with social media and your phone as well, because maybe you don't have the same problem, but maybe you do, because we kind of all have that that problem with our phones. So that's it for week 10. Week 11 should be the rest of Washington, a little tiny bit of Idaho, and then getting into Montana. And what I'm most excited for in Montana is to see my friend Ben's gourmet mushroom farm. I cannot wait. I think I'm gonna end up seeing him at a farmer's market where he's selling his items, but oh man, Ben is an absolute gem of a human being, and you will see that in week 11. So stay tuned. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you're a Patreon supporter, again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, but stay tuned for more amazing content over the next week, and I'll see you in week 11.